Greetings YouTube, my name's Alex and I am the Reef Dog, and today I'm going to show you what I've got going on downstairs in the sump. So here we are in the engine room then, and the first thing you will notice is that it's a pretty simple affair. Now I don't need masses and masses of filtration because I'm mainly going to be keeping zoas and a couple of LPS corals. Fairly low stocking as well, so I'm not going to go overboard. Now I've had to position this fairly carefully for you to be able to see it, but you can see the filter sock at the back. That is the first stage of filtration for me, of course. Now that filter sock I changed, and that was a brand new one. I changed that just under a week ago, I think. In fact, yeah, it was last weekend, and it's already getting pretty filthy. So that shows how often I'm going to need to keep on top of this. Now it's quite a fine mesh, so it's going to clog up quite quickly, to be fair. And I find it is a little bit awkward to remove, and that is because you have to unscrew the downpipe, which you can see bang in the centre there, every time you want to change the filter sock. But to be fair, that's not really a problem and I can live with it. So next up then is the Cheetah Reactor. Now this is essentially all of my filtration. All I've got apart from this is a little bit of Cyperax and some rock. So this is the heartbeat of my sump, and it's what keeps all the nutrients down. It is connected to a Cheetah Syncra 1.5 pump. That is a 1,350 litre per hour pump. And you can see the Cheetah right back there, just behind all the tubing, just about. The reason I went for this one is partly because I wanted a relatively cheap and reliable one, but also because it's very quiet. You won't be able to hear any noise in the sump apart from the return pump and the trickling of the water. That thing is pretty much dead quiet. Good job. So for demonstration purposes, I have turned the Algae Reactor on, and you can see that is filling up quite nicely. I would guess that was roughly half as full when I set it up around 3 weeks ago. So a little bit slow growth, to be fair, but it is keeping my nitrates at 1 part per million at the most, and my phosphates at 0.03. And that is what's known in the trade as perfection. Now I haven't had to empty it as yet, and I think that could be quite awkward in what is a fairly small sump. As you can see, there's not much room above that in the cabinet to pull the whole thing out, so that'll be fun. I'll get a towel and I'll make sure the missus is out so she doesn't get mad at me getting salt on the rug. Next on the list then is the Reef. Now I've brought this to the front of the tank. It actually lives at the back in a nice high flow area, but it's easier to demonstrate it this way, of course. Now I mainly bought this to measure par actually, but I haven't used it to do that as yet. What I ended up using it for was to set up with the cycling to monitor ammonia, and that was really good, really handy, very easy, meant I didn't have to test every day, just click a button and you can see it. And it's also interesting to monitor your pH as well, so I can see what my pH is regularly. It's actually running at 8.38, which is pretty high, and it's pretty much stable throughout. Now that's completely unnecessary, frankly, but it's a nice little bonus. But what I'm actually mainly using it for is temperature. So first up, I use it to tell me what the temperature is, but more to the point, I use it to warn me if there's an impending disaster. So if there's a power cut and the temperature drops by a couple of degrees, I'll get either an email or a text message, and it will allow me to run back as fast as my legs can carry me for work and fix the problem. And as I say that, it drops off. So that highlights one thing about the Senai. The sucker is rubbish. You can get a magnetic holder that costs about £1 million, and I'm not going to get that, but I might get one of those Eheim suction cups instead. And the other bit that I've bought to go with the Senai Reef is the Senai Webserver. This just basically means that you don't have to plug the Senai into your computer with a USB cable, which is a monumental pain in the arse. You can just access everything by Wi-Fi, nice and easy. These are about 125 quid, which I think is really expensive, so I've got a second-hand unit for about 70 or 80 quid, which is a bit more reasonable. And as some keen observers will be able to tell, this is not the Wi-Fi module, so I have to connect the Senai Reef to this by a USB cable, and then I connect on through my broadband. But that's fine, it's really easy, and I don't think you need the Wi-Fi module. This just means you have to plug it into your router. Now, heating the tank is this wonderful 20 quid heater. I just got a cheaper one. I would ideally like a Shago heater, but I want to run this tank on a budget, so I don't want to go blowing 50-60 quid when this one will do the job perfectly well. And that is particularly the case when it is connected to a Simply Aquaria dual temperature controller. Now, I don't have this connected to fans at the moment. I don't need that because it's nice and cold this time of year, so that's fine. I can worry about that next year. I just have it to run the thermostat. So the temperature is set to run at, I think, 24.5 degrees to 24.8, something like that. I actually find that there is a discrepancy between this thermometer and the thermometer in my Senai Reef. This one runs slightly higher. I don't really know which one to trust, but I would imagine an average of the two is the best way to look at it. And ultimately, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to bring the temperature up a little bit when I get round to it, but 24.5 degrees, frankly, is fine. My ideal temperature would be another degree hotter, but whatever. Back in the sump now, and we have my last piece of proper filtration. This is just a bit of Siprax. It's a small bag, probably a litre or less. Only reason I put it in is because I don't have much rock in the main tank, so this will provide my ammonia-eating bacteria. I don't want it to reduce nitrates and phosphates. I'm not expecting it to do that. It's just to make up for my lack of live rock. And finally, in terms of filtration, I have a bag of carbon, purely to keep the water looking nice and clear, polish that stuff out, and make it look lovely. I change this every week when I do a water change, and so far it is doing a good job. I also like to run carbon if I've got soft corals in the tank, in case they leach toxins or whatever, and this will clean that up nicely. So that's it for filtration. Next up then is the gadgets. So I run a DD H2 Ocean auto top-up. You can see the sensor on the right at the back of the tank, just sticking above the waterline. This thing has lasted me for 3 years so far. It's been rock solid, and I don't think it's going to fail anytime soon. That's all I want from an auto top-up. The other thing to tell you about is the hose that you can see in the middle of the screen now. You can see the little clear white one attached to the green Eheim pipe. I've cable tied it to the return hose, in fact, because I want to keep it above the water level of the RO top-up reservoir for obvious reasons. Do I want to siphon everything into my tank? Thank you very much. Now, I have seen this sump with an RO top-up reservoir in it. It doesn't come with one as standard, but some people have been known to put some kind of plank across the sump there, and then rest a cabinet, a little tub on the top. I don't like that because I think it would be a hassle to keep taking it out and topping it up, moving the RO top-up pump off and all that sort of stuff. So I've not done that. Instead, my auto top-up reservoir lives next to the cabinet. It's about 18 litres, and I think I get through about 1.5 litres per day, so that will last me a long time, at least 10 days, maybe even a little bit more. So the final bit of kit I have is, of course, the return pump. Now, I didn't have any of the original equipment from this tank. I didn't like it, so I didn't want it. This is a Jekod DCT 2000. You will note that it is doing a funny lean at a funny angle. That's because I can't be asked to change it over to corrugated piping. I did try, as I mentioned in my last video, but that failed and resulted in a leak. So I'm just going to put up with that. It doesn't look too bad, and I don't think it causes any vibrations. Now, I run the pump at 50%, and I have backed away on the camera so you can see at the very top of the cabinet the controller for the Jekod. If I'm honest, it is a little bit noisy, but not really, and it's certainly something I can live with. It doesn't really bother you every day, and you don't really hear it over the telly, so it's pretty much fine, and you certainly do get used to it. It's also got a handy feed mode, which I use when I want to change the filter sock or do a water change. Now, I run it at 50% because I find that gives me a nice level in the display tank, nice and low, which means I can turn my power heads up, and also to make it a little bit quieter. It does get noticeably noisier when you crank it up. So that's it for equipment then. All that's left to tell you about is the modifications. Now, what are you looking at the moment? You are looking at, if you look very closely, two little rubber nipples right at the bottom. There. Now, I've put them on because I found this tank was very vibrational when I got it, and with the cabinet doors resting against the wood, it certainly rattled. So just putting those on has really helped and reduced that. And they were just a couple of quid from B&Q, so nice and cheap. And you will have to look pretty closely to see this next bit. There is a black sheet of cardboard at the back in the middle. I put that on just to reduce light spill when the algae reactor comes on at night. To be fair, you don't get much light spill, but it is a little bit, and it is much improved with that on. I would like to also cover the algae reactor in vinyl wrap or something, the top bit that sits out of the water, to reduce that light spill further, but that's a project for another day. It's actually a little bit fiddly to do so, and I can't be asked. And the last thing to tell you about is a really boring but brilliant tip that I picked up. It is to lube the shit out of your hinges and cover them in Vaseline, and they will not rust up. Rusting hinges caused me problems in my last tank, partly because it was irritating having effectively a broken cabinet, but also because I did wonder if I was getting metals in the tank itself. So that's what I've got going on in my sump. Stick around for next update. I will be bringing a really exciting update. It's showing all of my livestock, and I have added quite a lot, even in a short space of time, and I've got an awesome rockscape that I've had made bespoke for me, and that is going to look really cool covered in zoas. So look out for that. Until next time, I have been the Reef Talk. Thank you, good night.